Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as you can tell, we have a very special guest today. Today, we are joined by Russell Todd. You guys may know him best as Scott from Friday the 13th, Part 2, also as Dr. Jamie Frame from Another World. Russell, how are you today?
Good, Samuel. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm really excited to get to talk to you today. As sort of the viewers will know, and as I kind of briefly told you off camera, we've recently just had your co-star Lauren Marie Taylor,
Yeah,
who also starred in Friday the 13th Part 2. So we kind of got her perspective on the movie. So I'm really interested to get your perspective from another side of the movie.
terrific. First of all, I don't even know who you're talking about. Who is this woman? I'm just kidding. She's great. I love seeing her at fan conventions that we do together. It's wonderful.
Yeah, she is just a complete ball of energy. She's so
She
fun,
is. She
she's an amazing person, and she spoke very highly of you, I must say.
Oh, that's very nice. Well, I would say the same about her. She's wonderful. She's down to earth. She's terrific. She's fun. She's sincere. She's a great lady.
Absolutely. As we start every interview, so I kind of really interested to know your early start. So, how did you first start in acting?
Well, it's funny. As a kid, I always wanted to be a film director. I saw myself as Steven Spielberg. And
Yeah.
and I say that for a reason because when I was a kid, I used to make home movies, and the first one I ever did was a Western, and I called it "How the West Was Lost," which I think probably was the title of a real Western. And I made it in my den, and I put up, like cardboard saloon doors that I would go through. And there
Wow.
was already a bar in the den that my parents used, and so that was set up as the saloon. And I remember having other friends of mine play the actors as well, and we made this movie, and I submitted it to the Kodak Young Filmmakers Awards. I don't know what year this was, but I was a kid. I don't remember what it was. I was a teenager,
Mm.
and and I got honorable mention. So I won a prize from them, which was amazing out of all the submissions. And later on, I had submitted that to a woman named Verna Fields. Verna Fields won the Academy Award for editing Jaws.
Wow.
And the reason I mentioned Steve Spielberg because I always wanted to be Spielberg. I figured,
Yeah.
well, she'd be the right person because she probably knows Spielberg. And so I wrote her this letter that said, when I was young, I did this. And at that point, I was a freshman at Syracuse University in New York, in upstate New York. And I thought I would write her a letter and see if I could get into the film business. Since I was studying film and drama at Syracuse, so I was doing both at the time. But I sent her that film that I had made years ago as a kid, and some other things that I was doing at that time at the university. And I couldn't believe what she wrote me back. And she said, Russell, I loved it. I love how you compared yourself to Steven Spielberg, which was, very far-fetched, but I figured why not give a shot at it. And she said, would you like to come to Hollywood and work at the studio?
Wow.
And I would love to do that. She goes, well, right now, you could be a tour guide, which is fine. So I was a tour guide at the studio. But before that happened, she came and she agreed to come and be a guest lecturer at Syracuse. So the university flew her in, and she came in and she spoke. So I had, all this great cachet after bringing, Verna Fields to Syracuse. So it was great. And then that summer, I went to Universal Studios and I worked as a tour guide. And it was there when I was giving the tour that all these people kept saying, are you an actor? Are you an actor? And I said, no, but, I'm studying acting at school as well as filmmaking. You should be an actor. I thought, I guess, I wanted to, but I really want to be a film director. So I got some shots and I got a commercial agent and I started booking things. So I thought, well, this isn't bad. It's good money in commercials. And then I started booking a pilot and then, a TV series and a movie, and things just started to roll. So I kind of put directing on the back burner, which it has been for many years, and ended up being an actor. So that's how it really all began. But it started with making that first movie. And then but it was funny, the second movie I made was on the floor of my kitchen, my family's house. And I had two cars. I had a map of the United States, and I had a car starting in Los Angeles and a car starting in Maine. And the two cars, through stop motion photography, met up somewhere in Kansas or something, and they hit each other and explode. What a nice, crazy thought. Who knows? But I did it, and then they burst into flames, and it was all stop motion and everything. And it came out really great until I lifted the map off the ground, and I had burned the linoleum of the floor making that movie. So I learned a little, and I I got scolded a lot.
Absolutely. You know, that's kind of it's always interesting, you know, getting to speak to people because, you know, so it even seems at such an early age you were still like almost immediately creative. You
Yeah,
know, because a lot of people would always be interested, but actually to go out of your way to make your own sort of short films and even to submit it as well, that
yeah.
it kind of like shows that you kind of take a shot, really, almost destined for the industry.
Perhaps, I was very lucky because my parents, my dad wasn't in the industry. My mom wasn't. My mom was a performer, though. She was a singer in a
Mm.
trio called the Darlin Sisters. So both of them exposed. I have two brothers, the three of us, to the arts at a very young age, which was a terrific blessing. And I think that if everyone can have that, it's magnificent because you learn so much by attending theater and
Mhm.
films and concerts, and to be exposed to the arts is magnificent. So I wanted to be in it in some regard, but I didn't know what. But then I don't know what it was that got me started. Oh, I know. I saw a Charlie Chaplin movie, The Tramp.
Wow.
And we had
Mhm.
one of those, we had an old little projector, and I would buy his Super 8 films downtown, and I would project that. And I remember just watching him, and he was magical to me. So at that point, I knew I wanted to be involved in that industry specifically. And then it just kind of just steamrolled from there.
Did you ever, at any point during your career, whether it was early or later, did you ever kind of do any stage or theatre work?
I did summer stock. I laughed because it was upstate New York in a place called Lake George, a beautiful area. And we were at a resort where it was the same group of people that came every year. We were the waiters and the talent doing the show on the week.
Yeah.
So we were serving people, and we had tables of 10. I'm only going to say this because it's very funny. And one of my customers at the table, who was a regular at the resort, was turning 90 years old, 90 or 92. I think it was 90 years old.
Wow.
And so it was up to me to carry the cake, and all the other waiters behind me, those metal things they put on top of a plate, they were
Mm.
banging those and were coming out. And I'm looking over to him over at the table to see if he's, realizes what's going on. And I see him like craning his neck to see what's happening. And I'm watching him, and I'm not watching where I'm going. And I slam into a table and literally drop the cake on the man's head. And I was laughing and crying at the same time, Samuel. And I'm like pulling it off of him and off of his suit and everything off of him. And I hear, Russell, get in the kitchen. And I go in the kitchen. They said, you're fired. And I said, it was an
Wow.
accident. Why are you firing me? It's an accident. And they said, you're out of here. So when the guy heard that I was being fired, he said, do not fire him. It was the best birthday I've ever had. No, and he was a regular there, so he had some clout. So
Yeah.
they didn't fire me.
Oh,
But so during that,
thankfully.
I would do summer stock, and we did Camelot and the Fantastics, all sorts of plays there, musicals,
Mhm.
which was fun. And I would have loved. I mean, one of my regrets, and well, it's a regret because I didn't have the voice. I never had a great singing voice.
Mhm.
Um, but one of them was that I always wanted to do a musical or something on, even a drama on Broadway, but that
Mhm.
never happened. So there was summer stock and some regional things, but very little.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you know, I always ask every guest I have on because I know how vastly different they are, and you know, to me, although it's always hard, obviously, to book a movie and a TV show, sure as you're aware, um, just the idea of performing anything live night after night just
Mhm.
terrifies me absolutely to my core. So it always blows my mind that people like willingly do this night after night. I have such admiration for people that do Broadway, especially.
Yeah. Well, you say that, and what you say, they feel as well. Not everybody, but you hear endless stories of incredibly well-known talent that vomit before they go on stage or
Yeah.
have incredible stage fright. So even you that's not doing it, that's how you feel, but they feel it the same, and they're used to doing it. So I
It's
think that that fear of
crazy.
every night is a different experience, especially in live theater. You don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen on that stage or how the audience is going to react. And again, I wish I had more of that. That would have been terrific because you have to really go with the flow. I mean, you have to do your lines and play the scene, but it is really a give and take because you do react to an audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously we're going to go into your sort of acting career. Um, please correct me if I'm wrong. Was I know you were in a movie called He Knows You're Alone, which was obviously
Yes.
stars Tom Hanks. Was that one of your first major roles, or what
Well,
first?
it wasn't a major role. Well, I wish it was a
Yeah.
major role. That
Or
was
was
my
that one of
first
your
role.
first
Yes.
roles? Yes.
It was the first. And they shot it in Staten Island, New York. I was there just one day, never saw Tom Hanks.
Hmm.
Just the girl I played opposite. And, we shot it. It was a night shoot.
Yeah.
And, and yes, I mean, you might have you mentioned this anyway, but, I die with it upside down with a slit
Yeah.
throat, which is exactly the way I die in Friday the 13th, which is a bizarre coincidence. I said, am I getting typecast here?
No, so for yourself, obviously it was such a huge movie. Um, how did it feel for you just to be involved, just to be kind of casted and to be around and to know you're a part of this machine?
Friday 13th?
Well, we'll start with He Knows You're Alone first, and then
Oh,
we'll go
well,
into
He Knows You're
Friday.
Alone was just was a one-off. So,
Yeah.
Tom Hanks wasn't known back then.
Hmm.
This is really his start too. And I forgot the girl's name. But so it was just, I mean, it was wonderful to be in a movie, especially your first movie. So
Yeah.
that was exciting. I will say that, even though I knew it was a very brief part, but it was integral because it's the opening scene of the movie, and you don't realize it's a movie within the movie. So I thought that
Mm.
was kind of cool. So when I die and then she dies, the audience screams and it pulls back and you see it's on a movie screen, which I thought was, a kind of cool way to enter the business or enter a film by being on a movie screen in a movie. But Armand Mastriani directed that, and he's someone I still talk to today and see occasionally
Wow.
out at events, which is wonderful. But that was, there was nothing like, oh, this will be a big hit. Or when you're making a movie, you never have any idea, what the
Hmm.
legs are going to be or what's going to happen to it. You're just happy to be employed as an actor and hopefully have a wonderful time doing it. So yeah, but for the first one, it was a nice entree into the industry.
Absolutely. And then obviously, as we kind of briefly went on, not too long after that, you then got introduced to us as Scott from Friday the 13th Part 2. Um,
Yes.
you know, this is obviously something that I'd love to really talk heavily with you about. Um, so when you've got casted for the role, did you kind of see the previous one to get a vibe of what the kind of aura and the atmosphere would be around the movie?
I did see the first one, but not because I was cast in the second one, but I, like you, like everyone else that enjoyed
Mm.
horror, I went to see it just when it came out.
Yeah.
And I was spooked and loved it and thought it was great. So when I saw in Backstage, an Actors Magazine, that they were auditioning for the sequel, I thought, wow, it'd be so cool to be part of this, because the first one was a hit.
Yeah.
So I got the audition and I got the part. But again, here you are. That was just the second one. So the first one is a hit. You're hoping that yours is going to be a hit too, but never in any of our hearts or minds could we ever imagine that it would go on and on and on and on and on and just so many sequels and the pleasure and the excitement that the fans have received from it so many years later. And it's fantastic. You just have no idea,
Mhm.
when you're doing something, you just think you're done, the check cashed. On to the next project.
Absolutely, and obviously the first one really does set the tone for the franchise. But for me personally, I always say that Friday the 13th Part 2 is the big testament to why the franchise went on so long. Because obviously we know at the end of the first one, obviously it turns out to be Jason's mother
Yeah,
doing all the killing, and she believes Jason's passed away, but obviously he's still alive. But
right.
obviously the second one is the time we finally see Jason as this killing machine monster. So that's why I always believe that if the second one hadn't done so well and been so loved by fans, I don't think it
Mhm.
would have gone on as long as it has.
I think you're probably right there. Yeah. It really drew them in. It was a good script, good cast of characters, not the actor, well, the actors too, but the characters, and that, like you said, the killing machine really drew people in,
Hmm.
and was the launching pad for the rest. And if it hadn't done well, of course, there would be no more. Yeah.
Exactly.
I forget,
So
I used to know the numbers, like what it was made for and what it grossed. In fact, there's a terrific book out. I'm going to plug it right now. My friend Ron
go
just
for it.
wrote
Yeah.
it. It just came out. It's called Sackhead, the definitive retrospective of Friday the 13th Part Two. It's just Part Two,
Wow.
and we're
Hmm.
all interviewed in it, and it covers every piece of trivia about Part Two. So I'm sure
Wow.
you can find this on Amazon or anywhere where books are sold.
Yeah, I'll make sure
Um,
to find the link. I'll find a link for it, and I'll link it down below because
yeah,
I'll
that's
be
great.
really interested to read.
It literally just came out this past week, and
Wow.
but that has a yeah terrific amount of trivia about the movie. But I think you're definitely right what you said. Yeah,
So, how did you feel personally playing the character Scott?
he was great. He was a cad. He was, I thought he was funny and charming, but he's a bit of an asshole, of course. Uh, but I read something the other day, which was really great. Though anyone that would hold that dog and love that dog as much as he did couldn't be a bad guy.
Yes.
And that's terrific. That's exactly who he is. Yeah, he may be a Playboy-esque type of guy and doing that whole shtick, but deep down he's still a good guy. And you always have to find what's good in a character,
Hmm.
to make him at least likable to you, the actor. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad I was chosen for that role. Yeah, and not one of the
Yeah.
other characters.
Yeah. So, for you, I know obviously I understand it was. I presume filming must have been around 1980. The movie came out in 81.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I completely respect that was a very long time ago. But do you remember kind of what it was like on set, or how you kind of felt with the atmosphere of the movie? Because obviously you must have been filming a lot at night. Do you
Yes,
remember how it was
predominantly
kind of like
evening.
on set?
Well, I know we were all very relaxed because Steve Miner, the director, kept us relaxed. He was a good guy, funny guy. We were all pretty much beginning our careers. I mean, some of the people had some credits, but
Hmm.
most of us were pretty new. So there was no attitude. Everyone got along. We laughed a lot. We joked a lot about the whole thing. Here you are making a movie about a guy that's going to kill you, all of us, and runs around with a machete and other tools. And you got to find humor. Just you don't go to a dark place.
Yeah.
But I guess, and I've told the story before, but I guess the funny part was leaving the set at night, which was the lodge by the lake. You'd walk down this long road with pine trees, which was beautiful. And the moon would be out, just like a shot from the movie.
Mhm.
And we'd go to the cabins to sleep. And we get off. My shot would be, maybe I'd be done at a different hour, so I'd be walking by myself down that road at night, and literally you'd hear in the bushes, kill, 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 kill. Some wise ass would be in the bushes, from the crew usually trying to scare the shit out of you. So I
Yeah.
remember that happening many times, or maybe it just happened to me. I don't know.
No, no, I remember speaking with Lauren, and she said a very similar thing. She also said that there were moments where if you'd be like maybe you'd be in your cabin or walking, and people would be like snapping twigs and
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
acting as if someone's creeping behind you. So
yeah.
I think it was most of the cast.
That's funny, and it's not real because Jason is your friend and you're working with him, and he's just an actor. You still get spooked like anyone else would on a dark, path
Of
in the
course.
middle of nowhere.
So, as you kind of said, most of the cast and crew, this was kind of their first real big credit in their careers.
Yeah.
How did you all of you get on together?
Very well. Because for that reason, I think above all, we were all new. No one came in with attitude like I'm better than you. I have bigger credits or
Yeah.
anything. Um, Everyone just wanted to do a great job. We were all excited because I remember talking about that. We were all excited about doing a sequel to a movie that did so well. So there was a lot of positive energy. You know, I was living in New York City at the time, so I just had to come up to Kent, Connecticut. You know, we all went up by bus, but I forget where all the other actors came from. Some of them might have come in from the West Coast, but you know, we're all thrown together in a place we're unfamiliar with in Connecticut, and you know, it's a job. You know, it's fun, but it's still a job. You know, you have a tremendous amount of responsibility. You know, to do your part and support the others as well. So there was excitement, there was adrenaline, there was joy, there was a lot of laughs. I remember we were just, you know, a bunch of young people having a great time, and Steve Miner made sure we did. So it was a terrific, positive experience.
You know, that sounds like the dream. That kind of sounds like something that, you know, if you're in a movie, especially as with such a big franchise, the idea of just having just a great time in general, not, I mean, whether you're in a movie or not is separate, but just having a good time and having fun with people, and
Yeah,
that's kind of the things that I would love the most out of that.
yeah. And I would think that maybe, you know, the seventh or eighth one, when you're continuing the franchise,
Yeah.
that there might be a little more pressure on you because you think, you know, it's gone this far now, you know, is it gonna end with us? Are we gonna be the ones that screw it up? So when you're doing the second one, you know, I think it was more of an excitement level rather than we have to really do great to you know, to keep it going. But you know, it just worked out. A lot of people say to me, which is fantastic, and unsolicited, that they really think the second one is their favorite, which I read in fan writings and things, and people that we meet at conventions, and I just think that's great. You know, I've only
Yeah.
seen, I will admit, I've seen 1 and 2 and 4, but that's all I've seen.
I mean, that's fair, to be honest. At least you're open about it, right? I mean, I've seen every single one of them, and I would, you know, to be non-biased, I would say that number two is definitely well up there for me as one of my favorites.
That's great.
That and number six, so it's close between those two for sure.
What was 6 called? Which was 6?
Uh, Six is Jason Lives, so
Oh,
it was
okay. Yeah.
directed by Tom McLaughlin.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's a fantastic one. I'd
I will get
recommend
through
it.
them all because they gave me the whole box set because
Wow.
in fact, they came here in the interview. We did commentary in the background for the box set.
Oh
So
yeah.
so they sent it to us, and so I have to take a look at that and catch up with everyone else.
Yeah, for sure. So as you kind of mentioned with Scott's fate in Friday the 13th Part Two, um, you know, for you it definitely must have been a lot of deja vu feeling. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
do you think it was just pure coincidence, or do you think there might have been reminiscences of the previous movie you did? Because the way you died was so identical.
It was pure coincidence. I had asked,
Yeah.
did you see that I died this way in this other movie? They said, no, I didn't know that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they think I have a good neck. I have upside down only.
Yeah.
No, it was just a coincidence, but very funny for me
Yeah.
and my friends that, you know, this how you're going to be cast always?
Typecasted. So how was that whole process for you to film? So were you sort of, because obviously, as you said, you're sort of hanging upside down. Um,
Hmm.
were you kind of stuck like that for a long time, or was it quite, the scenes had to be quite rushed through? How was it for you?
It wasn't bad at all because they had, of course, precast the foam latex piece.
Yeah.
So that was set and it was pre-slit. And then the tubing was in it. And so at first, you know, in my costume, I arrived at the set at that area of the woods, and the special effects guy had put on back in the makeup trailer. They had already put on the foam latex piece, but the other guy, when I got there, the other guy ran the tubing from the latex down my shirt, down my pants, out my leg there, because I was upside, you know, I would be upside down. And then once they put me in the snare trap and I was upside down, there was a guy up in the tree and they connected the tube to a pump, you know, to do the blood
Okay.
effect. But instead of being there for the next, 30, 40 minutes upside down, two guys were like, hold my shoulders up and my head up. So I wasn't
Okay.
completely upside down
Yeah.
during
You'd have
the,
passed out at some point.
yeah, probably would have. Yeah. So during that time, we were going over exactly, this is what you're going to do with your eyes. This is what you're going to do. You're dying, all the stuff. And the director was talking to me and saying, we really want to get this in one shot, which puts a lot of pressure on you because, there's
Yeah.
an effect here that they don't want to have to repeat new clothing and the whole thing. And if something happens to the latex mold, although I'm sure they had a second one. So, it just kind of, your heart starts beating and getting revving up to be murdered on film and to get it right. But it did. I mean, the whole process was probably an hour from once the time I was there and being, hooked up with the tubing and getting into the rope upside down. Maybe 45 minutes.
Wow.
So, and we got it in the one take, but as they cut it. They didn't there, but the censors cut it a great deal because it continued, where the blood was really flowing. I mean, I had to stop at the point where it was going into my eyes. I was like, I'm going. And that's when they cut for real. But unfortunately, the censors cut it much sooner.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, and I'm sure you must have, I mean, I know you must have spoken about this quite a lot. But as well for you, how does it kind of feel? Because obviously you're Jason Voorhees as the character, you are the first death with the famous Machete kill. So
Yeah.
so how does that kind of feel for you? Obviously, the trademark weapon for Jason Voorhees, which I mean, hundreds of people have been sort of taken out with that thing, but you were the very first person that's happened to.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It really is. I mean, I don't think about it now, but it has been pointed out to me, which is great. Of course, everyone talks about how the machete was backward, but then in fact, even in this book, in Ron's book, he explains that type of machete was actually it was correct the way they did it.
Oh wow.
So yes, for years I've been saying they had it backwards and that it was a mistake and no one caught it. And so that's kind of, carried on with everyone else. I guess it was properly done. But yeah, it's kind of cool to be the first victim of the machete and live to talk about it.
Do you know, obviously, I'm not sure if you're fully aware. Do you know if was it like a real machete or was it a complete prop? Because I know there were stories that obviously we've heard a lot about the machete being backwards. There was a lot of stories that because it was more of a blunt end, maybe that's the reason why. Because some people thought it's a real machete or not.
I believe it was, but the kind it was, which is in this book, and I forgot what he called it, has the two sides, but one is dull. But it's used for some reason. It can also, I guess it can cut too, but it's not as sharp a blade. I don't know. I'm gonna have to read that. But yeah, it was a real machete. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. That's the thing. I think that's what I kind of, for me, I miss a lot about the 80s movies where you had all these, the craziness. Because I don't believe nowadays they'd ever use a real machete or, like you even said about the process just to have the prop to have the tube go through. I think a lot of it now would be CGI. So the effort that used to go into these 80s
Oh
movies, I
yeah,
think we miss
yeah,
that so much.
yeah. They still use a lot of foam latex pieces and
Mhm.
squibs when people get shot, the blood
Yeah,
explodes,
yeah.
packet explodes. They still use that kind of stuff. But you're right, so much of it is CGI now. Yeah.
So do you remember what the general vibe or reaction was once the movie had been released by the general public?
God, I don't really remember it. I don't remember. I remember that, I was stopped a lot because it had just come out and people, it's many people had seen
Mhm.
it. So they enjoyed it. But I don't remember overall, like, well, I'm sure reviews were not great. It's a horror movie. They don't, I don't remember the original reviews, but I don't really care about reviews anyway.
No,
Uh,
of
but
course.
I don't really recall what it felt like as far as when it first came out,
Mm.
what the reaction was.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with reviews, though. Like, I mean, reviews are always, it's good to get maybe someone else's perspective, but the whole point is everyone has their own opinion. So I mean, there are
Yeah,
some movies, some of my favorite movies of all time have been crucified by reviews, but yet I love them, and vice versa. So it's just an opinion.
I agree totally. Yeah. I mean, if a lot of people live by reviews, they won't go to a movie if the review
Mhm.
is, whatever works for you. But it is
Yeah,
just someone's opinion.
yeah.
Sometimes everyone has that opinion, and then, it might be, wise to listen.
Yeah.
But I think you have to go and feel it out for yourself.
Absolutely. Kind of want to touch very briefly on another aspect of your career, which was soap opera. Um,
Yeah.
so obviously you were in the region of 130 episodes of Another World
Yes.
as Dr. Jamie Frame.
Yep.
Um,
I played a doctor on TV.
so obviously, again, that is such a completely different world to whether it's theatre or a screen movie. The commitment levels for soap operas. So, uh, could you give sort of the viewers an insight on what your life would have been like whilst you had to film a soap opera?
Well, we shoot 50 weeks a year. So you're there, you get the 2 weeks off for Christmas. And if you want a vacation, I forget, I think we were given 2 other weeks, but you'd have to put in for it like 6 months in advance because they'd have to write it into the story.
Mhm.
In fact, I was I was shooting it in Brooklyn, New York, but I was living in Los Angeles. And I forget, I was packing some stuff to bring back with me to New York, and I had a scale in the backyard, and I was holding the box to, get the weight of myself in the box to figure out that weight. And my foot slipped off the scale, and I broke this bone of my foot. So the first thing I do is, oh no, I got to go to the hospital, but I got to call the studio. So immediately they write it into the story that Dr. Jamie Frame was playing tennis and he broke his foot because I show up in a cast, on the next show.
Mhm.
But that one doesn't air for like 3 weeks or something or 4 weeks. But they immediately have to write in. So it's a factory. You're working 50 weeks mostly a year, and it depends on how popular or what storyline you're in as far as how many days a week you're actually working. But I was in the main family, the Corey family, so
Mhm.
I was working a lot when I was doing the show. And then Anne Heche was my girlfriend on the show. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
she's
Yes.
passed. Really sad. So she played the wife and the girlfriend, twins, Marley and Vicky. And so as soon as I got to the show, they decided to do a remote where Marley and Jamie would fall in love, and they sent us to France, to Nice, which was an incredible experience. Here I am just on the show. I get a remote, and they never do remotes on the show. I mean, maybe they would shoot in Brooklyn or something. So instantly, I'm the new guy, and I get sent to France, and I return from France, and I got to tell you what cold shade I felt from so many of them because who the hell are you? You just came here and you got sent to France. And I'll never forget it. But there was a lot of negativity when I was, that with Anne. But it's you're memorizing constantly. You bring the
Mhm.
script with you, to bed, to the bathroom, at the dinner table, wherever you are, because it's just endless pages. If you're in a lot of scenes. And the tougher scenes for myself being a doctor were the surgery scenes in the hospital, talking a lot of technical stuff. And we had technical people that would help us with that, with the medical
Yeah.
terms. But it's after a while, at first it was, how am I going to memorize all these
Yeah.
pages? But after a while, your mind is like a muscle. It just sort of works. And it was almost as if the words were jumping off the page into my brain, and I could just learn it like that. And quite often you'd get to the set and maybe an actor was sick, they'd have to change a scene, or they decided at the last minute after rehearsal, because you'd rehearse first in the morning, that it wasn't working, let's rewrite it. You get a whole new scene to memorize right there uh, before they shoot. So it's a tremendous amount of work. It's fantastic training for any actor. Um, and it's, I guess, a luxury in a way, because there you are working 50 weeks a year. I mean, for any actor,
Mhm.
to be employed for that long is fantastic. I mean, when you're doing a
Yeah.
nighttime show, you're not working 50 weeks. Uh, So yeah, it was a great job. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say about memorizing the lines, because I think most people, like for myself, couldn't even comprehend memorizing this stuff. And as well, because it's such a frequent turnaround, you
Mhm.
couldn't have had many opportunities to kind of reshoot scenes or many retakes of scenes. So it's fascinating to me to know how you manage to just kind of fall into that kind of role and fall into that repetition of memorizing things quickly.
Yeah, I think just, over time, it becomes easier and easier. And yes, I mean, you're shooting a script in one day, so it's a lot.
Mhm.
So they want to keep moving, let's get it. And our show, we had to memorize. I had worked on, Y&R and Bold and Beautiful, and I forget Bold and Beautiful, but on Y&R, I know they use, teleprompters if you want it, or people holding cue cards. So
Mhm.
makes it a lot easier. Although I don't think it does, because you're looking at the card rather than working with the act.
Yeah.
We had to memorize everything. But sometimes, you're doing a scene and you just can't stop from laughing. I would have incredible laughing fits sometimes. They go, come on, it's 9 o'clock at night. We got to get out of it. Okay, all right, one more. And you just couldn't. And there was just time. There was no way you could stop laughing. You'd have to walk off the set and, compose yourself for 15 minutes, and then come back and do the scene. Okay, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
But it depends who you're working with. If you
Yeah,
got the
of
gift.
course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you did that role for around 3 years.
Yes, it was 3 years, 3-year contract. Yep. And then
So once
my doctor was sent to in fact, he's in France right now at a medical convention.
um so for you, once you got kind of towards the end of that third year, did you kind of feel it was getting a bit too much for you, or sort of how were you feeling around that time? Because I can imagine working to that pace for 3 years solidly, it must get to you to a point where you have to question if you can carry on or not.
Right. It's very individualized. Many people, I mean, I just read the other day that someone who's been on like for 35 years on Young and the Restless. I
Wow.
mean, it's amazing. For me, as much as I enjoyed the chance to be on a show and doing it, and working with terrific people, very talented people, um, I had come from doing playing Cesar Romero's, Cesar Romero, he was the Joker, but
Yeah.
he'd done many other things before that. I was his son on a TV show called Riptide. We guest starred, and we were Italian oceanographers. And they liked us so much, they wrote another one, and we came back again, and we only spoke Italian, which I had to learn phonetically. So I got to be his son and work with him and hear amazing stories about him and Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford. And then I worked with Glenn Ford and did a Western. And he's an icon.
Yeah.
And Chuck Connors, the rifleman.
Hmm.
Um, we did a movie about skiing together. And I had this chance to be so many different characters and meet these amazing people that we grew up, idolizing. And to me, that was the joy of acting, playing all these people and having a chance
Yeah.
to do different things. I played a doctor for 3 years, and he was kind of a boring guy to me. I used to say, can't he like shoot his mother or or do something that the fans will be outraged?
Yeah.
The outrage was that he started dating his intern. So
That's
wow.
the excitement of 3 years.
Yeah. So I knew that I didn't want to continue after the 3 years.
Yeah.
And again, a great opportunity for actors. I mean, if someone has a chance to take it, I would say do it, because it's
Hmm.
wonderful. But for me, I really enjoyed jumping around to different roles and working with different people. So I was very happy at the end of 3 years. I came back and did some commercials, and that's when I kind of segued into what I was doing now, which is an agent. Yeah,
Hmm.
but there were other projects. Let's see, Chopping Mall was that 85? That was before Another World, I think.
Shopping mall, yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
So, funny enough, that's a perfect segue, because I was actually going to ask you, So what are you kind of up to now these days?
So I own a company called Russell Todd Agency, and we represent Steadicam operators and camera operators, mostly in the U.S., but also South America, Europe, Australia, and we book almost every major film and TV show, commercials, music videos, documentaries. These guys are used in
Wow.
everything, and it's been great. It's been, let's see, 23 years. So,
Wow.
and it's probably the best decision I ever made.
Mhm.
I got into it kind of as a mistake because I was doing an audition for a commercial, and my friend was running the camera, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm leaving this job, and I'm going to be working at an agency heading up the commercial division." It was all below the line talent: DPs, production designers, costumers, editors, makeup
Okay.
artists. And he said they're looking for someone to be the assistant to the head of the TV department. I said, assistant? I don't know. I just came off a show and I don't know. I said, let me meet them. And I went in there, and the woman that had just bought the agency, I liked her. She was dynamic. She was fun. And the woman that ran the TV department that I was going to be working for, she wanted nothing to do with me or anyone for that matter, because she just wanted to work on her own.
Okay, yeah.
But they said, you are going to work with him. He's going to be your assistant. So I said, all right. I mean, they said that to her, but I said, I want
Yeah.
the job. So I took the job. And literally the second week that I was there, they had me at the front desk answering phones. Talk about the right place at the right time. And this guy walked in, Bruce Green, a Steadicam operator. He did Mask, the original Mask. And he said, do you guys represent Steadicam operators? And I'm thinking, I don't, I don't know. I'll find out. And I was, let me get back to you. So I did some research. And I found out that no one repped them. So I said, well,
Wow.
maybe I should start that at this agency and see what happens. So I spoke to the owner. She goes, well, why not try? So I found 10 people that wanted to be repped. And I started it, and it started going really well. And I took more on. I think I built it up maybe to 15 or 20 people at that time. And about a year and a half, 2 years into it, I said, well, this is really great. Maybe I should just go on my own and do this. So I left. But part of my deal when you're an agent and you leave and you take clients, even though I brought those clients, they're all mine. I started,
Yeah.
you have to give them like a third of what you make. So for those
Uh,
clients, for the next few years, I had to pay back a third, which is fine. And then
mhm.
I built the building then up to about 50 clients over the last 23 years.
Wow.
And it was just, I had no idea I would ever be doing this. Never sat down and said, I'd like to be an agent. I think it's the best move I ever made. And it's been a great business, great industry. I'm still involved in the industry. It's a great feeling when you go to a movie theater and you're watching the previews, the trailers for the next 6 movies coming, and you go, 4 of those we shot. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. I instantly see it on the resume, and then of course when I go to see the movies, I see the credit that we arranged,
Mhm.
on the screen for them. So I love it very much, and I don't have to memorize a line. I don't have to worry about it when I wake up. So
Okay, and
there
hung
are
upside down
lots.
again.
Yeah. No one has asked me to be upside down again.
You
Although
know
I
that.
did another interview recently, and they asked me, would you work again as an actor? And I said, of course I would have. If someone had something and they wanted me to do it and I liked it, I would definitely do it again. In fact, what's his name? Someone's doing a reboot of Friday the 13th, but as a TV series. Did you see that?
Oh, I think
A
I
very
think I
well-known
do
producer.
recall it. Yeah, I do recall.
Can't think of his name, but a very well-known producer.
Mhm.
And I wrote him saying, hey, is there a way, my character died, but maybe it's a prequel and he's in it,
Yeah.
never heard back. But I think they are taking the main girl from part 1. I think she's going to be in it. Yeah.
Oh
Even though
wow. Okay.
she dies in part 2. So it must be a
Yeah.
prequel. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think Adrian King is. I believe she's kind of also involved in that. But I know exactly what
Yeah.
you mean because I do
Yeah.
remember hearing along the ether somewhere that's coming.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. So you
I
never
like you said
know.
along the ether. I never hear that. That's great.
No, that'd be really cool. So you never know. We might see you back associated
Who
with the
knows?
the
That or
Friday
something else,
franchise.
maybe. You never know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, just a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
These kind of more personal questions, I think, more towards yourself. So if you were to kind of fall back into the acting scene, or maybe even when you were starting in acting, uh,
Mhm.
what is or would have been kind of a dream role for you?
Oh, wow. I would have loved to have done a movie that had involved time travel. There are only a few
Yes.
that have actually done it that really worked for me. But I always wanted to, that always fascinated me, or write one, write a script that involved it. But of course, it's finding a way to make that travel work where it's not, that's ridiculous. It's got to somehow work. Um, but that's one thing, a drama with heart about time travel. Someone goes back and because his dog just died in the current and he wanted to go back in time, when he had just adopted the dog, and knowing what he knows now, how much time he's going to have with that dog.
Mm, yeah.
So that's always something I would have loved to have done a role like that. Like maybe I'll still have to write it if I
See, that's
can.
the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's I would say that's probably my favorite answer that I've had from a guest for asking
Oh,
that
really?
question. I love that answer. Usually you get the answers of especially with sort of the females that we have on the guest, they ask, roles with like Meryl Streep or like big actors they'd like to have co-stars with.
Right.
But no, but to have an actual movie prospect or genre, that's amazing. Time travel's too good.
Yeah. Maybe it'll happen someday.
Maybe, you never know. Never say never.
No, exactly. Very true.
Um, do you have across your career, do you have any particular memory or something that's really sticks out in your head the most that you always remember?
I think one of my favorite roles I ever played was in a Western, like I said, with Glenn Ford.
Wow.
And I was a bad guy with a good heart.
Mhm.
And I remember just showing up in Tucson where we shot this, and this old set, which unfortunately I guess had burned down a few years ago,
Oh,
mistakenly, of course. Um, but here you are in this created Western town, and they had put me in this, this long slicker coat, black with a black hat. Every day, instead of making me up, they dirty me up. They would cover my face in dirt and stuff, and the boots, riding a horse, the guns, and I have a terrific scene where I see someone in a reflection. I see he's drawing a gun at me, and I turn around and he flies back, and then I jump on my horse and I ride out of town. I mean, it was out of a child's dream, getting to play this Western guy. And just the shot, it was Charlene Tilton was also in it. We had some scenes
wow.
together,
Mhm.
and Glenn Ford, as I said. But that was a dream come true for me because, as a kid seeing Westerns and they're mythical and iconic,
Yeah.
uh, and to be able to do that was truly one of the highlights. And then my death scene at the end is in slow motion, like something out of Peckinpah, it's just, I'm taking bullets and I'm slow motion down, and you see the squibs going off, and I'm still fighting to get that last shot off, and then the last one hits me, and I fly back in slow motion on the ground. It was a wild fantasy. It was great.
Yeah, that's it. That's something that is literally the dream role. Very few people, especially as I'm sure you're aware, that most of the guests that we have on are all from the horror scene, horror industry. So I think you're only the second guest I've ever had on that's been associated with any sort of Western movie.
Oh,
So
really? Yeah.
it's really, yeah, and so it's really cool to hear kind of, because I don't think, especially over in this country, Westerns aren't really like talked about or really
Right.
promoted.
Sure.
So it's so cool to get to hear kind of these stories about Western movies. I love them.
Yeah. And this one is called Border Shootout, if anyone wants to get a copy somewhere. And it originally was for TNT Network.
Hmm.
I don't know if it ever made it to a movie theater. It probably was just for TNT. But yeah, Border Shootout. Yeah.
Border Shootout, that's the one. So whether it might have changed over your life, but who or what inspires you?
Well, people have all sorts of heroes, sports figures, celebrities, I've always said, although they're not here today, but my heroes, and I've always inspired me, were my parents.
Yes.
And every time I ever write anything about them, I always end it, on Facebook or something or on Instagram. I always end it, as always, you remain my hero. And they truly were. They were amazing people, friends, parents, and have inspired me during their lifetime. And since they passed, their memories inspire me. I'm getting emotional.
Of course.
um, but yeah, and I think people, it's wonderful, if you're an actor and the fans, fantastic, especially with Friday the 13th and soap operas that I've done. That's
Mhm.
fantastic that many actors are heroes to the fans, which is wonderful. But to me, I've never put an actor or a politician or a sports celebrity or any sort of celebrity on a pedestal. I've always put my parents there and my grandparents. And to me, that's truly, the heroes, for what they do. And not everyone is lucky with their parents, of course.
Mhm.
You're born into a family, you have no choice.
Yeah.
But um, I was very blessed and lucky, and they will always be a positive force in my life, living or gone. Yeah.
That is so beautiful to hear. Thank you for those words, and I think, I mean, for me, it's echoing you. I've always said for my whole life, my parents are my complete heroes.
Oh
I
wow.
I am truly blessed to have, you know, parents that have supported me and backed me, and
So
and like
crucial.
yeah, and as you said, not everyone in this life is as lucky to kind of have parents that kind of are constantly there for you. So I think when you have that, you have to nurture it. You have to appreciate and love it as much as you can. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
mean, when
Thank you for those
parents are
words.
there for, or if you're lucky enough that they're there in the good and the bad, and they support you no matter what you want to do in your life. I mean,
Yes.
here you are, I want to be a filmmaker. I'm a kid. I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
A lot of people would say, no, you're doing this,
Yes.
get a real job, a real
Yeah.
job, and, and make this money, but no, they were always supportive no matter what choices I made.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, so, do you have any kind of social medias or any upcoming projects or events that you want to plug or tell the fans?
Well, my Instagram is Russell Todd LA. Currently, I have it set to private, so you can still go there and request
Hmm.
to be, connected, and I connect with everybody. But right now, I just have it private still, but I'll be changing that at the end of the year. So there's that. But I'll be appearing at the Hollywood show, which is actually happening. There's one happening just next month, but I'll be appearing at it in June in Burbank, California, which is a fan convention, but it's not horror. It's everyone. I remember I did the show years ago, and sitting next to me was Adam West, and
Wow.
one side of me was the last living Munchkin.
Oh
On the
my
other
God.
side, and Hugh Hefner was across the way, and Gilligan was there, and it was just people from all kinds of TV shows and personalities. So that show happens about 4 times a year in Hollywood, and they just booked me to do that in June, and there'll be other conventions. I just came back from one in London
Hmm.
in November. I did a convention there, which was great. It was a Comic-Con.
Yes.
So I never know when those are going to pop up, but
Yeah, of
if they are,
course.
I'll put them on my Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure I'll link a link to the convention that you're attending in June, as well as your Instagram, so everyone can kind of keep up to date with your life and what's happening with you, Russell.
Thank
Um,
you.
Russell, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you and to talk to you.
Thank you. The same with you, Samuel. It was a terrific interview, and very, very easy, and I enjoyed it very much. So thank you.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's you know, having the opportunity to get to speak to people like yourself, and for you to put your story out there, and to hopefully inspire so many people that can kind of listen to these and watch these and decide if they have a passion or a love for something, just to chase it. And you never know what's going to happen in life.
Good for you. I agree with you totally, and that's a great thing to say, because you do change people's lives. You know, you never know how, you know, a child or a young adult or an adult will be affected by something they see, experience, hear about. And you know, if this makes someone want to go into the industry in whatever capacity, that's fantastic. If it makes them say, I'm not never getting into that, and then they go off and do something else great,
Yeah,
that's wonderful too. But
yeah.
exposing people to it is wonderful.